Hi, Messi. Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hussein. All right, thank you, Agbeyo. Um, this is July, and we are grateful and thankful that we made it again. Today, we'll be moving on from what we did last month of June. We're continuing on the DAX series, which we started in the month of June. Okay, so for those who might be joining us for the first time, if today is the first time seeing ID Analytics, all right, you're welcome. We are a community of data analysts, from a beginner, the curious one, or if you're trying to pivot from whatever career you're currently in and you want to pivot into tech and then data analytics is your chosen field, we welcome such people into our community where we hold your hand and help you through the journey, where you can talk to experts, where you have a community, you have a sense of community that you can relate with. So ID Analytics as a complaint actually uses this medium to give back to those in our community, a vibrant community of data analysts, from beginner to expert. And then what we do as ID Analytics is that we are a data analytics company where we empower individuals and organizations to harness the transformative power of data through tailored training and consulting by ensuring they thrive in today's analytics-driven landscape. As an individual looking to pivot, looking to upskill, or an expert looking to to brush up on what you already know, ID Analytics is a go-to organization. We do everything that has to do with data. Like I was saying, this July edition should mark the sixth series of our Power BI. We are running the Power BI series for 2026, and then July marks the sixth edition. And we started talking about DAX, data analytics expression, from last month. And our speaker is still the same person, Mr. Hakeem Hussein, who is a senior BI developer with First Bank. I did some introduction about him last month, but I'll be introducing him again for the benefit of those who will be joining us or who are joining us for the first time. Mr. Hakeem Hussein is a senior BI developer with FBN. He is a Microsoft certified trainer and a Microsoft certified data analyst associate with over 7 years of experience across financial, retail, and enterprise analytics. He specializes in Power BI, DAX, and full Microsoft modern data stack, and has led large-scale report builds and platform migration. All right. So we'll be having Mr. Hakeem Hussein taking us through the second phase of the DAX series for the next 1 hour. Kindly make sure you have your questions handy. If there might be opportunity to ask the question while he's teaching, or at the end of the teaching, you can get your questions ready. He will be here to answer them. Welcome once again, Mr. Hakeem Hussein. You have the floor now. All
Okay.
right, let's move in. Okay, he's here.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Um, Thank you so much, um, Messi, for that introduction. Again, my name is Hakeem, and I am your colleague within the data analytics space, and we just want to be here to, share a little bit of knowledge with ourselves. All right, so permit me to share my screen so that we can get straight into it. Okay, please confirm that you can see my screen. Okay, all right. So yeah, welcome to today's session. And we, in our last encounter, we tried to look at some of the foundational elements about in writing DAX, right? And we looked at some things, and we are just going to build on that frame in order for us to be able to understand some certain things, right? Now, the key concept of DAX is what we call the evaluation context, right? And what is the evaluation context? The evaluation context simply means that it's just how your measure, right, is being presented, or is being viewed. I don't know how to the word to describe it correctly, right? But what we say evaluation context, what we simply mean is that how your measure is being calculated visually. Okay, what is happening behind the scene? I'm using the same model we used in our last class. It's a simple star schema model where I have a product table, a date table, and I have a sales fact table. Okay. Now, if you look at the model that I have, you will see that there is a one-to-many relationship between the product table and the sales table. What this simply means is that every product that I can see in the product table, for one product that I can see in the product table, on the sales table, it appears many times. If you think about that logic, it simply means that if I pick one product, if I pick iPhone, for example, as a product that we sell, we can sell that iPhone as many times as possible, okay? And because we are recording the transactions of our business in our sales table, you will always see that there is a filter that comes from where the product exists once to where the product exists multiple times, okay? It's key for us to understand these basic things so that whenever our measure is behaving in a certain way, it's also whenever our measure is behaving in a certain way, we are able to trace back why the measure is reacting the way it is doing. Okay, so I have a simple measure that I have written, but I'm going to show you, right? I have a simple measure of sales that I wrote. Simply, what is this measure doing? Let me go to the table view, right? And then show you why I wrote what I wrote. So I want to calculate what is the total sales that we made in this our business. I look at the product table. I have the product, the different IDs of the product. I have the product name. I have the product category. I have the unit cost. And then I have the unit price. Okay? I have the unit cost, and then I have the unit price. And then in our last class, we calculated the profit. Okay? Right? So basically, the unit cost is the price of one of those products. The unit price is the cost price for one of the products. That's what the unit cost is, right? The unit price is the price we want to sell one of the products, okay? So for coffee bean, for example, we are selling one of the coffee bean at $37.35 naira, kobo, whatever you want to sell it, right? Now, I want to know how much did we sell. In order for me to know how much we sell, I first need to find out, okay, for coffee bean, how many coffee bean did we sell? Then I take this and then I multiply that by the amount, okay? Do you all understand this my explanation, or you want me to take it back again so that I want us to be very clear? Fantastic, fantastic. Can I get one more thumbs up so that I know we're good? Any other person, or if you don't understand anything, please ask. Okay, so I'll take that as a go. All right, so on the sales table, I have the quantity. Okay, I have the quantity on the sales table. What I can do is that I can create a column that will bring in the price, right? That will bring in the unit price, or that will bring in the quantity, right? That will bring in the quantity to my product table. And how can I do that? I can simply come here on my product table and I can say new column. And for this, I'm just going to put QTY for quantity. And I'm just going to say related, okay? Related of my sales quantity. Okay, let's not. Okay, so you can see that this is what I did here on the sales table, right? By just referencing the product table, right? So I created a new column that brings in the unit price, right? From the product table, which is the dimension table. But on the other hand, if I try to do that here, it doesn't work. Why? Because this is the single side, right? This is the one side of my model, right? And filters only flow from the one side to the many side. It doesn't flow the other way around. There are ways to which we can do that, but we don't want to go into that complexity right now. So basically, if you look at my sales measure, what I'm saying basically is that I need you to iterate. We talked about iterators in our last class. So what I'm saying is that go into the sales table, right? Pick the quantity that was sold for every product. Multiply that, right? Multiply that by the unit price. And then whatever the outcome of that, your aggregation is, sum it up for me and let me know the value. So if I drag this to my canvas, I have, let me use this. No, sorry. All right, so when I do that, this is what I have. I have 509,000, right? 590,000, sorry. Now, this is the total sales. This is everything that we sold as far as the product is concerned. But what we are talking about here is context. And I must say that what do we mean by context, basically? Context, like I explained in the, is that we have in DAX what we call evaluation context. And in evaluation context, you are basically talking about two categories of context. You're talking about the filter context and you're talking about the row context. Now, we've already done something that talks about the row context before, right? In our last class, we looked at that. And that is, on our product table, we have a table called profits. Okay? So you can see that I am subtracting the unit price from the unit cost, right? And what I'm getting is my profits. What is happening in this column, right? What is computing this thing? What allowed this computation to happen is what we call the row context. Why is it a row context? Because this calculation is going to take 37.35, it will subtract it from 26.3, and it will compute the answer. It will move to the next line, it will do the same calculation, and it will compute the answer for you. So whenever the calculation that is happening in DAX, right, is a row-based calculation, what we are saying is that you are doing a row context calculation. Okay? Now, if I take this, my measure, right, I'm going to put it in a table. Let me put it in a table. And I'm going to take the product category, and I'll also put that in this position. Let me reorder this. Okay. So what has happened here? What has happened here in this measure, you saw that initially the measure I wrote was giving me one value, right? But immediately I put a context to it. What did I do? I added a category context, telling the DAX engine that no, I don't want you to give me this calculation as a single entity anymore. I need you to give me in the context that I provided to you. What is that context? The context is the category. So what did the engine do? The engine will now go back to your model and say, okay, is there a relationship between products and sales? Yes, there is. Is there a filter between them? Yes, there is. And the filter is flowing from the product side, and the product side is where the category is sitting. Okay, remember. So since there is a filter that flows from the product table to the sales table, then I will be able to give you what you have requested of me. And if you look at this, you can see that our total also match. Thankfully, Microsoft has solved that problem for us. It wasn't like this before. But now we are sure of what the DAX engine is computing, or what we are seeing as our total. So basically, what we have seen here is what we call the filter context. Okay? Now, we can also look at filter context in the context of calculate. So say, for example, I don't want to see all these other categories. I only want to see the computation for one single category. Okay, let's quickly write that measure. So I'm going to say new measure, and I'm going to call this, let's just do snack. So I'm going to say for snacks, I only want to see for snacks. I can use calculate, right? And calculate is the most powerful function in DAX because it allows us to be able to do what we call context transition. And what is that? That simply means that I can move from one context to another context. I can transit from a row context calculation into a filter context, and I can move from filter context to a row context calculation. Okay? So whenever you want to do those kind of things, right, you would need calculate or some other advanced DAX functions to do that. Okay? So I'm going to say, what do I want to calculate? I want to calculate the sales, right? I want to calculate the sales, but I want that calculation to happen where the category. So I'm saying, go and filter the product category. You see now, I've applied a filter context to it, right? Go to the category and filter to where category is equal to snacks. So what am I telling the DAX engine here? I'm saying, look, ignore every other thing, every other calculation that you can, right? And just let me see that of what? That of snack. If I commit to this formula, and then I take this and I put this inside here, you would see that only one measure is being returned, right? And the measure is what? Is simply that of the snack or the snacks. Okay? So this is basically what we mean when we say filter context. We've looked at row context, and then we've looked at filter context. Does anyone have any question before we move to the next thing that we want to discuss? Do you have any question for me? Any question? Okay. All right. So in here, we have a calculation that I'm doing, right? And we are trying to, because what we are trying to do is to move ourselves from that elementary level into a much more sort of advanced level, right? So I have a table here. in this table, right, I have the current context that I am doing this calculation by, and the context is at the month level. Okay, so I'm looking at what is the sales at the month level. So the context here is the month context, right? So this sales value is being evaluated at the monthly level, evaluation context, right? So you can see that that 500 and something thousand has been broken down into the amount we made in the different months. However, I have been tasked to do what? To do a calculation of finding the best selling product. Okay, I want to find the best selling product in each month. How did I do that? So let me show you the measure that I'm using to compute this. So I am using two functions basically. I'm using the top n function and I'm using the concatenate x function. And why did I decide to go this approach? The reason why I'm going this approach is because it's easier for you to return a value in DAX than for you to return a text value, right? So because I want to return a text value, I needed a function that can allow me to retrieve a text, okay? And I'm also putting into consideration some modalities that I'm going to explain. So for example, assuming for my data is straightforward, but it could happen that in a month, right? That in a month, I can have two best-selling products, right? It could happen. So in that context, I need the two best-selling products to be displayed, right, as an output in my measure. Okay? So I'm going to use the DAX query view to show you what my first half, right? What the first half of my measure is returning. So I'm basically saying that I want to return, so the first aspect of my measure is the top n. So I'm saying top n. So top n is a function that we use to, to retrieve the top item. So there are 10 students in a class. Who is the top student? Okay, top n, go and give me the top 1 or top 2 or top 3. Okay, so I said top n, give me the first product, right? And give me that first product based on the amount of sales that we made. Okay, when I run this, right? When I run this query, I get the product to be sponge. Now, if we go back to my table, if you count the number of times that sponge appears, you will discover that sponge is the most selling product that we have from January to December. Remember that in my top n, I have not added any context to it. I'm just saying, go inside the product table, look at my products that I have sold based on the sales that I made, and tell me the product that gave me the highest sales. So it's looking at it holistically and it's telling me that, oh, if I count for January, it was sponges. February, if I look at May, June, and I look at December, so out of the 12 months in a year, for 5 months, right, this particular product is your top 1 product. Now, I now deployed concatenate X, right? And anytime you use an X function, product X, sum X, we know that these functions, they iterate over a table. That means they are able to, because the output of this top n is going to be a table. It's not going to be a measure. It's not going to return one value for me. It's not going to give me a name. It is going to be what? It is going to be a table, right? So I'm saying go and iterate over this table, right? Go inside any of this table. Once the output is valid, right? You found that top end product. I need you to return the product name for me. Okay? I need you to return the product name for me. Why am I adding this here? I'm adding this here. If I take this out, this is the delimiter parameter inside of concatenate text. Why am I adding this here? I'm adding this here just in case that two products fall as my best-selling product. I need something to be able to separate them. So I'm saying use comma to separate them, right? If you want it to list them row by row, you can use the Unicode of 10, right? So that's going to enter to the next line. It's going to do like an enter for you, and then that can also work as well. But in my own case, I just prefer to be simple, and I just decided I can do this as well. Okay, that also works for me. And when I display that, what is happening again? What is happening is that my measure is being evaluated based on the monthly context that I've put in there. So the context that this is being evaluated at is at the month level. So it will go into January. Look at all the days of data that we have in January, right? What product did we sell the most? Then it will return the name for me. It will go to February, it will do the same thing, and it will return the name for me. Okay? So what are we looking to understand here? We are looking to understand iterators, concatenate X, because these are some of the functions that we are going to use, that we're going to keep using in our day-to-day activity. I must also tell you that concatenate X is an interesting function. I use it every time to debug complex situations, right? So you might need to do some research and understand more about the concatenate X function. Okay? So this is how we use iterators or concatenate X functions to be able to return text values within DAX. Does anyone have any question before we move to the next thing that we want to discuss? Any question? Any question? No question? Or people don't want to ask me questions? Please ask so. If you have any question, ask. All right, since there are no questions, let us move. The next thing we want to look at is month-on-month calculation. I want to be able to see how my sales have grown at a monthly level. How did I do compared to the previous months? Okay, how did I do? Did I do well? Did I not do well? This should help me track how I am behaving. So I'm going to show you the measure that I wrote for this. Okay. Now, in this measure, I'm going to introduce us to what we call variables. And variables, they are important elements in DAX. For those of us that are used to programming or that are within the programming space, this is probably not new to us. For those of us in Python, we know about global variables and all those kind of variables, right? If you are from Power Automate, you know input variable, output variable, global variable, and all those kind of things. Now, but the variable in DAX, the way it operates is completely different from how the idea, the logic is the same, right? But how it operates is different. Okay. Now, I want to calculate a month-on-month growth. In order for me to be able to calculate the month-on-month growth, I need to have certain parameters. The first parameter that I need to have is the sales of the current month. Okay? And I have created a variable to calculate that. Okay? So I'm saying, and how do we declare a variable in DAX? Okay, we declare a variable by starting it with what? VAR. And then you name your variable. So I'm going to give my variable, let's say CY or CURR, right? That's the name of my variable. And then I put an equal sign in front of it. And now I can, write some DAX to tell my variable what I want it to return. Now, one thing you must know is that any variable that you write inside that is a local variable. What does that mean? It means that if you write a variable in DAX, you cannot call that variable outside of the measure that you have written. What does this mean? This means that I have written the month-on-month growth, percentage growth measure, and I did a calculation for previous months in that measure. If I want to call on the previous month variable in another measure, I will not be able to achieve that. Every variable that you write is evaluated in the current measure that you're writing, in the current context, within only this measure that I've written. I cannot call it outside of here. It's very important for us to know that. So if I want to write the previous month calculation, I would have to write another variable or just do copy and paste. Okay, I'll write to rewrite it again, or just copy what I've written here and then just go and paste it anywhere else that I want to use it. Okay, so I'm using variable to declare the current sales. So for example, if I tell this to return the current month, right? If I tell it to return the current month and I commit to this, this is what I'm going to get. Sorry, forget it. I've already formatted it as percentage. That's why you're seeing that I formatted my measure as percentage. That's why you're seeing all these percentages here. Okay, so you can see that it is returning this same value that you have here, right? Only that it is adding percentages to it. So let's go back into our measure. Then I did another calculation to calculate what is the previous month sales. So I'm saying that calculate the sales for me. Remember, calculate, our guy, calculate, right? And now use another function that we can use to, we call them filter modifiers, right? They allow us to be able to modify filters. And now use date add to say, hey, calculate. Yes, I want you to calculate sales for me. But I don't want you to calculate anyhow sales. I want you to go back in time and give me the sales for the last month. Remember that in what context am I doing that calculation? The context is always what is in front, okay? So if I say, come and return my previous month for me, let's see what that is going to be. Okay, I'm going to commit to this. You would see that for January, because there is no month before January, what I got is what? Is a blank. Okay, we can always solve that problem anytime. Because in a business case, you don't want to tell people, you don't want to show it like this. Okay, let's quickly deal with that. Okay, so what we can do is that we can just come and add a +0 behind our measure. We can just do a +0. And if you like to complicate things, you can do so that you have something like this. So that it's clear to your users that there's no value for that month. Okay? Or you can also use another function called qualis, right? You can use qualis to also solve that problem. But let us leave that for now. We're going to come back to that pretty much later. Okay, so I'm going to commit to this. So now we know what the previous month is saying. For us to calculate our previous month sales, I first need to subtract the current month from the previous month. I want to get that value. You see this calculation that I'm doing here? I can declare it as a variable. In fact, let's do that. So I'm going to copy this. I'll come here, press enter, and then I'll call this sub. Okay. And then I'm just going to do this like that. So I'm just going to say subtract the current month from the previous month. I don't need to put this in brackets. I can take it out. And then I'm going to commit to this, right? Nothing is going to change. The only thing is that instead of writing this inside my divide, I can now come and call on the measure that I've written, okay? And if I commit to this, I am still going to get the same output, okay? So once I have subtracted this from this, I'm taking the output of that subtraction and I'm dividing it by the previous month. And that is what is giving me my results. So I'm just saying return my results, right? My result is my final calculation, obviously. And that is what is computing these for me. Okay, so you can see that in January we made 46,000. In February we made 54,000. That is 16% higher than what we did in the previous month. In March we did 49,000, which is 8% lower than what we did in the previous month. And you can see how that is computing everything for us. Okay, so that's basically what is our aim here. Our aim is for us to understand variables, right? And I hope that by us displaying this, we have been able to understand variable, and we now can put everything into a much more larger context. Okay, does anyone have any question about variables before we move forward? Any question? Okay, no question. So let's move to the next one. This next one is nothing special, right? It's just the same thing that we did before. The only thing is that I decided to add a little bit of layer into the context that the measure is using to behave, right? So what I did is that I first added the month, then I look at, okay, what are the categories of products that we have under each month, right? For each month. And then I want to see how each of those categories are behaving relative to the previous month. Okay, so you can see that for beverages, right? For beverages, we did 11,485,000 in January, but in the previous month, in the next month, which is February, we did 11,225, which is minus 2%, which is 2% lower than what we did in the previous month. And why am I doing this? I am doing this to let you know that your measure will always respect the context, because now the context I'm adding here is now two contexts. There is a month level context at the monthly level, right? And then there is a category level context, right? And you can see that my measure is respecting the two contexts that I've added to it. It's evaluating that my output at that level that I have added to it. Okay, so that's essentially why this is just the same measure, right, that we wrote before. Is the exact same thing that we're doing here. What we are just doing is that, you know, we're trying to look at the additional context and how that also translates into, you know, the output that we want, basically. Does anyone have any question? Does anyone have any question? Any question? Okay, I have a question. I have a question. Who is ready to answer my question? So I want you to tell me, how do you think we are going to be able to do a calculation to find the highest, what is the highest amount, right, that we sold the product in a month? The highest amount that we sold the product in a month. How do you think we can come up with that measure? Just share your idea with us. I just want us to discuss. Let it not be I'm the only one talking. Anybody? All right. Who wants to go?
Okay, by using the top, by using the top end for the product and the sales.
Okay. So you want us to use top N. Okay. That's okay. We can try that. You can try that. Any other person have another different approach they want us to use? Okay. So let's not waste much time. Let's dive right into it. So I have another measure that is here, and this measure is just simple. I'm using the max X function, right? And what am I doing with the max X function? I am iterating over the date table. So I'm saying, go inside my date table. Let me show you what my date table looks like. So this is my date table. I have the date column, I have year, I have month, and I have the index. Okay. I'm using the index because I want to sort this in January, February approach. So I'm saying go inside this date table that I've showed you, right? Go inside the date table. Go line by line and be returning the sales. Once you go, the first row, compute the maximum sales for me for that date. So what am I saying in essence? I'm saying that go to the 1st of January of 2024. This data is just for 2024. Go to the 1st of January of 2024. Tell me what is the maximum sales that I made on that day, right? Once you have done this, I then need you to sum everything together and tell me what is the maximum sales amount for each of my months, okay? And if you look at that, you will see that this is what I have, right? So I have this value here for each of the months, right? Ignore my total for now. The reason why this total is like that is because at the total level, it is evaluating this by the highest hierarchy that it can see, which is, at the year level, okay? And that is why it is returning the same thing that it has as an output for the 2024. And if you go inside the data, if you go deep down inside data, you'll discover that this output that it is giving me is for the month of July. So within the year of 2024, the month that I made the highest sales, right, is July, right? And that's why it is giving me that as because what I'm saying is give me the maximum sales, right? But because I've added a year and a month context to it, it is respecting that year context, telling me that for 2024, the highest sales that you sold is 3,857 naira 65 kobo. And if I now look at it at the monthly level again, you can see that it is also respecting the month level, and that is what is computing this output for me. Okay, so why am I using some of these functions, right? The reason is because I want us to be able to know and understand how things work within the context of Power BI. Iterator functions are one of the most difficult concepts for people to grab at an early stage, and it's good for us to use them over and over again in order for us to understand what is happening. Okay, if you have any questions, please do let me know at any time. All right. Okay, you have a question, please go ahead.
So for the mass X in the DAX formula, can we include the month? So
Can you include the month in the
yes,
measure?
Yes.
No. The reason is because you cannot include that, because an iterator function, so if I do max X again, the first argument in an iterator function is a table. It's not requesting for a column. Does that make sense? The argument is the first thing you need to provide it is a table. So you can either provide it with an existing table in your model, or you can provide it with a virtual table. Okay? So you can provide it with a virtual table, that works fine, right? Which you can do, right? You can add the month, but now the month, you would have to create a virtual table for that month. So it's like you are going to create a table that is not physically present in your model, right? But in that table, the column that you have in that table will now be all the months. Does that make sense? Or it sounds complicated?
Yes, it makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Any other question? Another question? Okay. If there are no questions, let us move to one that I like. Okay. So I want to introduce us to another iterator function. So you see that I'm using a lot of iterators, right? Because I know that as some of us are probably new, these are some of the functions that, they can be difficult for us to grasp and understand. But before we do that, right, I want to do a simple calculation, right, that will return. Let me go back to my first page. I want to do a calculation, right, that will return 590,107 naira 72 kobo for me as the final output, irrespective of whatever I put as the context. I don't want it to respect that context. Can you tell me how I can write that measure? Let me explain what I want again. I need you to help me. I want to write a measure. I want that measure to return 590,107 naira, or dollars, because I like dollars. Thank you very much. $107, $590,107.72, right? I want it to return that number. So where I have 127,000, I want to see that same number. Where I have 186,000, I want to see that same number. Irrespective of whatever it is I put on the category, I want it to always return that number for me. How do you think I can compute that? Anybody? How can I write that in DAX? Hello? Hello? Nobody wants to help me. So they have left me behind. That's okay. I will help myself. Let me help myself. All right. So there are, I said there are functions that we use to modify filters, right? One of those functions is a function that we call all. Okay? And what does all do? All allows all to tell DAX that, hey, I've already added a context, so I want to add a context. But irrespective of the context that I have added, I want you to ignore that context. Ignore it. Ignore the filter. Ignore anything, any context that I've added to my DAX space. So I'm going to show you, I've already completed that. I've helped myself. And this is what I wrote. So I have calculate. I want you to calculate the sales, but now I want for all my products. If I drag this and I put this on my canvas, irrespective of whatever context, whatever filter is coming from the product table to the sales table, that all function is the one, it is going to ignore it. It's going to ignore it and it's only going to return the total value for this. It's only going to return the total sales for this, right? And that's what I have here. So that introduces us to another function called all, right? The all function is really an interesting function, right? That allows us, to interact, right? To be able to interact with the calculate function. So the reason why we are looking at all of these functions is for us to know what each of those functions is capable of, the power that they have, right? And we have learned now that all allows us to be able to ignore all filters that are coming from our dimension table, or it allows us to ignore the context that we have on the current in our current visual. Okay, so let's go back to our rank. So I have a simple table, right? I have a simple table, and it's just the product ID, the name of the product, and the sales, the total sales that we made for that product. Okay, but now I have been tasked to do what? To rank these products. Okay, but before I do that, I want to add something really quick. Let me add I want to add a slicer. Okay, so I'm going to add a slicer, and I want to add the slicer for product name. Okay, so I want to add the slicer for product name, and I'm going to put this just beside it. All right. So what exactly did I do inside my rank? So let's go and look at our rank measure. So I'm saying that, hey, rank X, I want you to rank all my products, right? How do I want you to rank them? I want you to rank them based on the sales, right? And I want you to sort it in what? In descending order. So anytime you see DESC, it means descending order. Okay? So once I do that, I see that, based on how these are performed, I have seen that, this is the value that I have. But there's something that I want to quickly explain, right? In the rank function, there are two additional arguments in the rank function. And these arguments, it is really key for us to be able to understand them. So I'm just going to take like two minutes to understand them, and then we can call it a day. Now, in the rank function, we have two arguments. One is the skip, and one is the dense rank. It's the dense. What do they do? And how do we use them? So we use them to deal with ties. So it is possible that I have two products that made the same sales for me. It's very possible. How do I want to deal with it? Now, you remember back then when we were in secondary school, right? If two people carry first, in some school, they will now skip 2. They will skip second position and go to third. Did they do that? They do that in your school?
Yes.
Okay. So that is just us. That is what these two things does. If you use the skip, what you are telling us is that once there is a tie, so if I have 1, right, and then 3 products tie on 2, I'm saying that those 3 products that tie on 2, skip the any other number. So you're going to skip 3 and 4, right? And you're going to, the next number that is going to come is going to be 5. Okay? So that's what that does. For dance, I'm saying, irrespective of what it is, if 3 people tie for second, the next number should still be 3. I don't care. The next number should be 3. I will not deprive somebody of their third position because 2 people decide to be excellent and take second position. Okay? So that's just the basic concept within the rank X function. Okay? So that's what it is. I just wanted to use this filter to show us something. So for example, I want to select like 2 products. So let me say I select coffee bean. Oh God, what have I done? Oh, sorry. I added something to my measure. Okay. So let's sort this. Sort it again. All right, fantastic. So we're back. So I'm going to select coffee. So you can see that the number I am seeing for coffee is 13. If I select dark chocolates, I'm seeing the number that exists within that larger context. So what is happening here? This is showing me, because I said all products. Remember that in my rank, I'm saying all products. Now, I don't want this to be done this way. I want it that anytime I select something within my measure, right, I want you to show me the position based on these 2 things that I've selected. So if I select these 2 measures now, I want it to change. This 19,000 should now be first. Dark chocolate should now be what? Should be second, right? So I am now going to come and change this all to all selected. Okay? If I commit to this now, look at what's going to happen. You see that I'm going to get first and I'm going to get second. If I add another product to this, it becomes third. If I come and add sponges to this, sponges become first and this becomes second. So there are instances where, you know, you want to do this, right? Where you want whatever is coming from your measure, whatever is selected from your measure, you want that to be added into the context that your measure is currently using to evaluate the output. Okay? And that's when you use all selected. Okay? So I think that we have looked at, you know, some basic theories today. I don't want to waste much of our time. Hopefully we have more time, you know, to catch up. DAX is something that I know now we all have the ChatGPTs and the Claude, you know, to help us write our DAX. But this is what I always tell people. And some of these things, they hallucinate a lot, right? So if you don't understand, if you don't have that grounding knowledge, right, you will not be able to tell when your agent or whatever model you are using is giving you the wrong calculation. And you can just go and compute that in your organization and everybody is querying you that, you know, this number that you are giving us is not correct. Okay? So it's critical for us to always understand how things work behind the scene. Okay? Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please let me know. I think I'm on time. I promised myself I won't waste time today. Am I on time? Madam Messi?
Yes, you are. Thank you so much for the insightful session. If we have questions for Mr. Hussein, we can quickly just signify so he can answer them. Do we have questions? All right. Are we saying we understood everything he has said? I dropped a link in the chat for us, or for those who were not present in last month when we started the DAX series. You can just quickly use the link to visit our YouTube channel. You can always catch up there. And then thank you so much for staying through to the end of the session for July. We'll be coming together in the last weekend of August again to continue with our Power BI series. And then for those who are not on our WhatsApp community, kindly scan the QR code you can see on your screen right now. It takes you straight to the WhatsApp community. You can visit our LinkedIn page as well. And then our YouTube channel, where you can catch up on previous series that we've had on Power BI and other resources. We have close to 1,000 of resources on our YouTube channel. You can just catch up there. And if you have questions, you can drop them in the community. We have experts in the house who can always attend to your questions. So if you don't have any question for Mr. Hussein, we'll be meeting in the last weekend of August, like I said earlier. Kindly enjoy the rest of your evening and enjoy the rest of the week ahead. Thank you.